Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next session here in our Charity Project Management Conference, the 24-hour talk around the clock in support of children and families from the Ukraine. My name is Cornelius Fichtner. Hello. Thank you, everybody, for joining me here today. And my topic right now is PMP exam lessons learned. And if you are watching this session live at the time when during the charity conference it is supposed to go out, you may be asking yourself, wait a minute, this doesn't look live, this isn't recording. You would be perfectly correct because my travel plans got completely disrupted. I was supposed to fly to Switzerland yesterday. Unfortunately, I will be flying to Switzerland during the charity event, and at the time when I'm supposed to do this presentation live, I'll be roughly here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So my apologies, but I decided, you know what? Internet is probably a little bit iffy on the plane, so I will be pre-recording this session for you all. So PMP exam lessons learned, that is the topic right now here, and that is also our agenda. I have lessons learned after lessons learned after lessons learned, and at the end I'm going to give you a take action slide. Just so you know, this is being streamed live on Facebook and YouTube as I'm recording it. I can see we have about 20 people joining me at this time, and if they have any questions, then please do go ahead and do put your questions into the chat. Live joiners, thank you very much. Before we get started, however, I want to remind you, this is a charity event for a really good cause. We are supporting UNICEF. All these fine project managers, they speak for 24 hours around the clock. Please do your part. Visit pm-prepcast.com/UNICEF. This is just a forwarding link. It just takes you to UNICEF so that you can donate for our event. Every dollar helps. Thank you very much. And now let's get started with the first PMP exam lessons learned that I have for you. And it's a contradiction. It's easy. No, it's hard. And this is true. I mean, I'm picking these lessons learned from the internet without a filter there. And the question here is this truly a lesson learned? One person said here, as you can see on the left, the test was more difficult than I expected. And then the next person said, well, the test was easier than anticipated. To me, the bottom line is this: don't believe one or the other, because you won't know whether the exam is easier or harder than you expected for you personally until you actually take it. Because if you're just taking this, on the light side and you're kind of studying and you're not doing much, then it will be hard for you. But if you really focus and you put yourself to it and you engage with the material, you have a simulator and you do everything that's right, well, you're probably going to come out of this going, that wasn't all that bad. Okay. But it is a question of proper preparation. In my opinion, instead of worrying about whether the exam is easy or hard, why don't you look at this also as an opportunity to study up on the latest project management theories, principles, processes, tools, techniques, become a better project manager in the process. Because preparing for the PMP exam, it should be more than just adding 3 letters behind your name. This is a point in your career when you can step up your game. So it doesn't matter if it's easy, it doesn't matter if it's hard. You need to step up your game. You want to become a better project manager in the process. Next lesson learned, situational questions. Okay, lessons learned here is that the exam was 100% situational questions, like what would you do if there was a conflict? What if it's over budget? Underperforming stakeholders, changing halfway, new stakeholders. This is expected. So the old style PMP exam questions that I got, which of these is an output of a certain process, they no longer exist. Today, the PMP exam is fully situational. What do you do if this happens? What if that? What here? How could you have avoided this situation? What could the project manager have done differently? Right? All these type of situational questions where you have to decide the best action forward. Okay, that's expected. It's good to know that this is still the case. Cynthia asks, help define proper preparation. Not really the focus of our conversation right here, Cynthia, excuse me. But in essence, you want to definitely study the PMBOK guide. At the moment of this recording, both 6th and 7th edition. You want to study the Scrum Guide, Agile Practice Guide. You want to take a 35-hour course to prepare for the PMP exam. And most importantly, overarching over all of this, use a PMP exam simulator. I cannot stress this more enough. So just quickly here to answer the question from Cynthia there joining us on YouTube. Next, COVID vaccine. Yes, there is actually a lessons learned about COVID vaccine and the PMP exam. This is really simple. Don't get the COVID shot and then the next day you have your exam, right? I was a bit tired after mine. My wife was completely wiped out. So do not schedule your exam and the COVID shot right after each other. Exam first, COVID shot next. Why not? The other way around, not recommended. Okay, right. Then there is something new on the horizon, and I cannot really tell you much about this one. PMI in the past, when you got audited, when your application got audited, required you and your contact persons to submit all your documentation, all your audit documentation on paper, literally. Pieces of paper, you had to send them in. They had to sign across the flap. It was quite a bit of work to do. And now this seems to be going digital. No official word from PMI yet on how exactly this is going to work, but here we go. This is what we've got so far. I got audited and submitted my audit docs electronically. Reference contacts were sent a template email with my professional experience included to sign and submit. It took 2 days for an audit result to be sent from completing all docs and having reference signed. Thankfully, my audit was successful. Okay, I think this is just as an aside. It's an interesting side note. You shouldn't be worrying about an audit. If you fill in your PMP exam application honestly and everything in there is correct, and maybe even reach out to the people who you worked with and say, hey, if I got audited, would you approve this? You're going to be golden, right? The process, whether you have to submit it on paper or electronically, it doesn't matter all that much. A small number of applications get audited, completely random. It is what it is. You may get into the new electronic process. You may have to do it on paper. Next, we have language. Okay, and this is something that you may not be aware of. You can actually choose your language on the PMP exam. If you speak any of these languages here, from Arabic all the way to Turkish, then you can select that. I believe it has to be done early on in the process. Okay, and I'm not quite sure. I don't quite remember where exactly that is, but you can see there at the bottom, once you complete the extradition payment process, you will receive an email notification containing, and I believe that statement down there is telling you what you can do and what you should be doing in order to request a different language there. Okay, so that's a possibility. This is especially helpful if English is not your first or even second language, and you want to make sure that you really truly understand this, okay? The big difficulty here is very likely that many PMP exam simulators out there only offer English. We have a Spanish version as well, but we're only building that at the moment. So you're using an exam simulator, it's in English, and then you go to take the exam and it is suddenly in Turkish, right? Yeah, you speak Turkish fluently, but you practice using English. So, you have to understand what you're doing, and you have to be sure that, yeah, that's what I want to be doing right there. And then exam duration is our next lessons learned. That is a big one, because everybody says this, the toughest part of the exam is the length. Somebody else said this is similar to reading a textbook for 4 hours straight, and it's really, really hard to keep your focus up, okay? And this is because we've been out of school for a while. We're not used to taking these really long tests anymore. And so once you get, especially because the PMP exam is split into 3 parts, 60 question break, 60 question break, 60 questions, right? By the time you reach the 3rd batch of 60 questions, you may be struggling, right? You have to read the questions multiple times, right? And also the second person, as you can see here on the screen, says, after about 120 questions, everything sounds the same, seems the same, looks the same, and your mind starts to blur, and every question just fades into the next. Really hard to keep your mind and your focus going there. So that means you really need to maintain the endurance for 4 hours and do take the breaks, right? So as I said, 60 question, break, 10 minutes, 60 question, 10-minute break, 60 question, and then you're done. Those 2 breaks, do take them. If you take them at home, you can get up from your chair, you can walk out of the room, go to the bathroom. That's the whole point of this. Even if you feel, I'm doing great, I'm doing fantastic, I want to continue. No, take the break. You still have 120 questions ahead of you. Take a 10-minute break and continue after that. All right, next we have the question length. And the question length, in the past, several years ago, long questions, lots of superfluous text. Then PMI changed to shorter questions. And now it seems like the length of the questions is once again increasing. Right? This person says, spent almost 2 minutes staring at some of the fluffy questions. Began to panic when I spent 80 minutes for the first 60 questions. The good news here is this person realized, oh my God, I'm over time. So they had the time management down. They knew 80 minutes for the first 60, that's too much, right? It has to be 76, something like that. Yeah, roughly 76 minutes, right? 4 minutes over there. Right? So you want to make sure that you understand when, but be prepared that on the exam, the question length may be, that you may be finding longer questions than you are expecting. Definitions and ITTO. In the past, you used to really have to know all your definitions, all your inputs, tools, techniques, outputs. That's what ITTO stands for. And nowadays, you don't really have to memorize them. In fact, for the last 3 to 4 years, I've always recommended don't memorize them anymore. That's not the point. Know the definitions, right? Look at the terms and the definitions, the glossary, understand what they mean, understand where a work breakdown structure is used. What are the contents of a project charter and a project management plan? But you don't need to know the verbatim definition of a work breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of the work and so on. You don't need to know that anymore. You need to know what it is used for. Okay, and same thing here when it comes to the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. You don't need to know them by heart. This person didn't even study the ITTOs. You need to know them from a 30,000-foot view. Oh, let's see, what is that? That's about 9 kilometers, if I'm not totally mistaken, up in the air, so high up, right? And yes, there may be subtle references to ITTOs, but not a lot. Like, for example, one reference could be you had a problem with a stakeholder. In which document Couldn't you go and look how the communication works with that with that stakeholder? Yeah, that's an input tool technique and output. It's a tool. I think this is the communications management plan where you might find that, or the stakeholder management plan, one of these two, right? So you have to understand how they fit, but you don't need to know which process produces the stakeholder management plan. Okay. Formulas is next here. Formulas, believe it or not, formulas are still on the exam, but not as heavily as they used to be in the past. Expect that you have to know how to interpret charts and results, and expect one easy calculation. And by easy, I mean something where you do not even need your calculator. Okay, 1 + 1 = 2. There you go. That's about how easy this is. So when we say interpret, they will show you a graphic, an S-curve, and then they will say where in this S-curve is most money spent, and then you have to point to A, B, C, or D, right? Or they're giving you a value. Your SPI is X. What do you put into the report for your stakeholders? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is this okay? We don't have to do anything, right? So interpretation is important. The reason for this is simple. With today's project management software that everybody uses, with one click, you can calculate all the numbers. You don't really need to know how the numbers are being calculated. It is good to know and understand, have a basic, basic knowledge of how this is done, but you don't have to do it yourself. Press of a button, there you go. But what does it mean, right? My CPI is 1.2. Is that good? You need to know that, and you need to be able to say, what am I going to do based on this CPI? And this person here, one calculation, 3 to 4 on the SPI, some CV questions, no calculations at all, 2 questions about SPI and CV, yes, the cost variance, that is. The other person said I had 1 EVM with a calculation and 3 EVM without any calculation. So they are on the exam. Formulas are still needed, but not in the depth that we used to have to know them. Moving on, the exam got revoked. Yes, unfortunately, that does happen. Here is the story of this person. Pearson VUE revoked my online proctored PMP exam. I did read out aloud on the first question, and I was warned for reading aloud that was not permitted. On the third question, my exam got revoked. At that time, I didn't read out loudly as they claimed. I wasn't aware that mumbling is not allowed in the exam as well. I felt that I didn't get a fair warning from Pearson VUE on this matter. All right. And yeah, this is indeed not Pearson VUE's problem. This is not PMI's problem. I'm sorry to say that this is that student's problem. They didn't know the rules. Okay? If you take the driving test, come on, everybody drives too fast sometimes. Everybody doesn't, when there's a stop sign, yeah, I don't have to stop. Occasionally, right? We all do that. During the driving test, you will not go over the speed limit. If there's a stop sign, you will come to a full and complete stop. You know the rules. So for the PMP exam, it's exactly the same, okay? I want you to read everything. I want you to know the rules. Go to pearsonvue.com/PMI and read up on the rules. What am I allowed to do during the exam? What am I not allowed to do during the exam? Okay, some examples. You're not allowed to look off the screen. Okay, so something like this, not permitted, right? Doing it once, okay, you'll get a warning. Doing it all the time, nope, right? Mumbling, kind of reading or speaking aloud, covering your mouth like this here, right? Not allowed. Leaning outside the window, so that there you go. You're no longer, your face is outside of the camera, right? Not allowed, okay? All of these things, you have to be aware of those, all right? And it is your responsibility to know those rules and follow those rules. Okay. Okay, let's see. My clicker isn't working. There we go. The next one is tutorials, technology, and room setup. Okay, this is all about making sure that taking the exam from home works for you. There we go. Do they give you any time to fiddle around? Yes, I've taken it as is from the internet. Fiddle around with the exam features before the exam starts. Yes, you'll have 7 minutes to join the introduction for exam introduction. So there is a tutorial, yes. Okay. There is also a technical system test. Okay. You want to do the technical system test before you get in. So even a week before, right? Go to the computer where you want to take the Pearson VUE test and then do the technical system test. Turn off all notifications. I mean, last time I checked in my notifications, Microsoft Teams was on my computer. I never use Microsoft Teams. Why is Microsoft Teams running in the background? I had no idea. So do check all your active software, and you'll probably find something that you weren't even aware of. Okay. Do not use a work computer for the PMP exam. Too much security, right? Your work computer is probably locked down, virtual private networks, firewalls, anything, right? You will not be able to take your PMP exam on your work computer. 99% chance that it will fail, okay? So use your personal computer at home. Your work computer is very likely not going to be able to do this. All right. Then next, this is all in white, and that's intentional. This is what the PMP exam kind of looks like, except that the font size here is really big. Okay. On the exam, it will be really small. The OnView software takes over the entire screen, all white background, and it's almost always blank. Okay, so you have this really white background with small text in it, right? Now imagine if this were a huge 18-inch monitor or something, 24-inch monitor, right? And you have the question just here at the top, right? And the rest of the screen down here is white. It's empty, right? This is going to be a real problem. So use a smaller monitor. Questions presented at the very top, competing for space with the toolbar. They go all the way from the left to the right, makes it incredibly hard to read. The next button is down at the lower right corner, so that, you know, on a really large computer, your text will be up here. The next button will be very small down here on the right. So choose an appropriate size computer. But the good news is you can increase the font size. Okay, so you do this on the website. It allows you to change it right here. You know, I looked this up, and for the life of me, I can't remember how you do this. I believe it is Control Plus and Control Minus on a Windows computer, if I'm not 100% mistaken. I looked this up especially for this slide, and I completely forgot. My apologies. All right, so yes, you can make it bigger or smaller, but Cornelius doesn't know how. So please do read pearsonvue.com/PMI and check it out for yourself. All right, moving on to the next one here. You can't have any applications running in the background. It will prompt you that the application is open, right? During the exam, the screen will be locked as you are connected, and you will only be able to see your examination page. You may be wondering why the background image. For those of you who don't know, I believe that's Benjamin Franklin. He is on one of a dollar bill here in the United States, the $100 bill, I believe. Why does Cornelius put the $100 bill in the background? The funny story behind this slide is the person who mentioned this said, I had a crypto mining application running in the background during the PMP exam. You're running a crypto mining application. Really? Okay. You know, it was just way too funny not to mention here. Anyway, moving on. We're still on technology. Using an Ethernet cable to connect your router to take spotty Wi-Fi out of the equation, right? Wi-Fi issues, go plug in. Do not try to do this over Wi-Fi. Plug in your computer and use a cable, right? Give yourself the best possible chance in order to do this. All right, we are moving on. Last one here in the technology section is turn up the sensitivity of your microphone. This is because they are listening to you. There will be a camera pointing at you. The microphone will be on all the time. They may be chatting with you. They may be talking to you. No, I don't believe you hear anybody. It's all typed, but they can hear you, right? So you want the microphone sensitivity all the way up right there so they can hear you well. Okay, next, exam content outline. Okay, we have somebody here who says, it's 2:30 in the morning in India. Yes, good morning. Again, Cynthia, you have a question on the ECO. Why don't you type it in? Because we are at the ECO right now, and I'll see that I can answer the question here for you. Okay, so exam content outline. Let's see what the lessons learned here is. There was a question that referenced personality indicators. I never saw anything about this tool in any of my studying. Okay, yes. And this actually is good because Cynthia's already typed in her question. Not sure what is the best way to understand, study, read ECO in a manner that would help me answer the question pertaining to each task. Please suggest. So Cynthia, I can give you the first tip here to move forward, okay? Let's go back to this student here. This applies to you as well, Cynthia. And it's simply this. You want to go and take the ECO, right? And you want to look this up. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this, okay? Personality indicators are mentioned in the ECO, in the exam content outline. This is task 14 from the people domain, okay? In the task 14 of the people domain, personality indicators, exactly that term, are mentioned. So if this student had known this, he would know that you want to assess behavior through the use of personality indicators and analyze personality indicators and adjust to the emotional needs of key project stakeholders. That's in the ECO. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick up the exam content outline. I have a link to the ECO at the end of this presentation. And then I want you to take highlighters. Highlight everything in green that you know. I'm good with this. I really understand here how to interpret the source and stage of the conflict, the first one. I'm sort of okay with support, diversity, and inclusion, but you know what? Support team performance, I've really not learned anything. I've never done this. I need to pick this up, okay? So I think, Cynthia, this is the first thing that you want to do. And then, you know, I think the only other way to answer your question here, how to study, how to answer questions about these topics from the ECO, is the number one exam prep tool you need, an exam simulator. Okay, that's really important. When I took the exam, take a couple of free questions. That was back in 2004. Free questions that you could find somewhere, good enough in the back of a book that you were studying. You would be able to pass. Nowadays, exam simulator for the PMP exam. That is a must-have. So that is my tip for you there, Cynthia, in order to do this. But for everybody, please, this will help you. Green, yellow, red, so that you understand the content of the exam content outline. Next, the whiteboard. You are no longer allowed to write anything down, whether you are at a test center or at home. You have to use the built-in whiteboard. And most people actually ignore it because it is so clunky and really difficult to use. But the recommendation from this person here, again, a lesson learned from an actual exam passer or taker rather, practice the whiteboard function if you think you might need it. And here is where you can practice this, pmprepcast.com/whiteboard. Whiteboard. Again, this is just a forwarding link, takes you to the whiteboard from Pearson VUE, pmprepcast.com/whiteboard. And then you can give it a go. My recommendation in now is this. You have studied so hard. You have prepped so well. You've got everything in here. You don't need some sort of a security blanket and write things down. That is no longer needed, right? And while you're using an exam simulator, you will get much better used to doing this, to knowing things by heart than you might expect. All right, moving on. Taking the exam. Yes, actually taking the exam. You can take the exam at home, or you could take the exam at a Pearson VUE testing center. This person took it at the testing center. It was well run and friendly. That was my experience as well. As generally speaking, this is the experience of most people who take it at a center, right? Of course, there are always horror stories of things that go wrong. And, you know, if you look at the bell curve, you know, they're outliers. Generally speaking, you know, Pearson VUE Testing Center experience is a good experience. And then the next lesson learned is, doesn't matter if you take your exam from home or whether you actually go to the testing center. Know yourself, right? This particular person here is a morning person and took the exam at 5:30 in the afternoon, right? So that's 5:30 in the afternoon. It takes 3 hours, 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, well, almost 9:20. In the evening, right? Yeah, no wonder you would be tired if that is the time span that you are there. Yeah, know yourself, understand when you are the sharpest. If you're a morning person, take it in the morning. If you're an evening person, take it later in the day, okay? So that you have the focus that you need for this hard and long exam. All right. If you take it from home, you have to log in a little bit before. You'll get an email from Pearson VUE. They tell you exactly when and how to log in and what you're supposed to be doing. So there is an FAQ or other. There are instructions, right? I believe they want you to log in 30 minutes before the exam, right? You have to upload your photos. You have to take pictures of your room. Yeah, literally. You have to, you know, click, and show them what your room looks like. I'm not going to show you my desk. It's an absolute mess. But you have to have a clean desk. Your room needs to be clean, right? Somebody had a printer behind them. They had to remove the printer, right? So all of these things, they're going to take a look at your surroundings and tell you what you need to do. Waited 15 minutes. Didn't know whether he could leave the room. I do not know that either at the moment. I haven't yet had anybody be able to give me a clear answer. As you're waiting for the exam to start, are you allowed to move out of the camera? Do not know. Okay. This person, well, okay, so this person here only waited 15 minutes, right? A quick start. This person here waited 40 minutes until they allowed you to start again. Didn't know whether you could leave the room or not, so you had to stay there. Okay. Yeah, so the next lesson learned takes us back to earlier, you know the rules. During the online exam, I received a warning twice because of moving my hand. Yes, and then the next one continues, man, when a prompt said, a corner of my head was out of the webcam, I felt like I got yelled at by a teacher in elementary school, and that took me a while to shake that off. Again, how could you avoid this? Know the rules ahead of time. And as you are using your exam simulator to practice, maybe put up a camera and have yourself up there. You know, are you moving? Are you mumbling? Do you have any mannerisms that might cause you to be yelled at? Right? You have to understand the rules. You have to make sure that you follow the rules. Yeah, you can have water on your desk. In fact, you can also have a glass of water here. I have a see-through glass of water. I've been told by people that you are allowed to have a mug. So like the picture here, a mug, a yellow mug that you can't see into, that is allowed. But according to the Pearson VUE website, It has to be a clear bottle of water or a clear glass. All right, so that's just what we know here. Okay, breaks and time management. Mentioned this a couple of times previously here, but it is important to repeat. There are 2 breaks, and both of these breaks are 10 minutes long after question 60 and again after question 120. And why does PMI do this? Well, simple. In the past, during the old PMP exam, you are allowed to take as many breaks as you wanted, right? You could get up, you could walk out. You couldn't take it at home at that time. And then the pandemic hit and PMI said, well, you could take the exam at home, but you're not allowed to get up. So doing this, you have now just failed your PMP exam, right? Just getting up from your chair to stretch, you're done, okay? So they realized that's an untenable situation, and they decided to have 60, 60, 60, split the exam into 3 parts, both at the center and at home, so that there is a break, so that the people at home can take a break, the people at the center can take a break. Oh, and by the way, the 10-minute break does not count towards your time. So it's 230 minutes actual exam time, plus 10 minutes for the first break, plus 10 minutes for the second break. Okay. One important thing to realize is, because you're allowed to leave the room at home during the break, you're not allowed to go back, right? PMI wants to avoid this, right? All right, 60 questions are up, take your 10-minute break, you go away, you open up your books, you quickly check question number 47. What was that again? Then you come back, you go back to question 47 and fix it. No. That's exactly what they don't want to do. So you submit those first 60 questions, they're gone. You're done with those. You can never go back. You take a 10-minute break, right? And then the next 60 questions show up. And by the way, in the middle 60, you cannot go back and you cannot go forward either, right? You can't see what the next 60 questions are. It's 60, 10-minute break, 60, 10-minute break, 60, and that's it. So essentially, you're taking 3 exams of 60 questions each, right? And then together, they make up the PMP exam there. All right. Next, we have ending the exam. Okay. And this is one thing that everybody says. It only takes a moment when you say end exam. Are you sure? Yes. It only takes a moment. It feels like 10 years because you're so anxious to get your result and see what's there. So be prepared for that, right? Know that there will be a kind of a delay of some sort that seems like it is forever. Okay. But again, after you click end and you see your results, stay in the camera until you get through the last steps and the system closes down. Do not yell. Do not put up your hands here like, yay, I passed, right? Do not, wait, let's move on to the next one here. Do not pick up your phone and take a shot with your camera of the screen that says you have passed. You will immediately fail your exam. Your exam isn't over until everything has shut down, okay? Yeah, so make sure that you stay calm, relatively calm. I mean, smiling is probably okay, but yelling and jumping around, probably not. So stay within the camera, and keep it down, keep it professional. And as soon as everything is shut down, yell as loud as you want, okay? That's where you want to go, because this person here moved the hand on the previous slide, right? Say, I moved my hand, almost got disqualified, right? So do stay put, do not move forward there. Okay, not sure if I passed. Yeah, this is something that's been coming up in the last 2 to 3 weeks, more and more. People saying, you know what? I am not really sure if I passed. I don't know, right? And I'll give you an example about that in a little bit here. may not have a slide on that, but I can recreate it on the fly here. So this person says, just finished my exam. I heard other people being unsure if they passed or not, so I took it slow and read everything once finalized. I read the page that said congrats and celebrate, but it was confusing. Is it congratulations that I finished the exam? Or is it congratulations because I have passed the exam, right? So that seems to be giving people a little bit of confusion. My recommendation here is this. You will receive a Pearson VUE email about an hour or so after doing the exam. Oh, by the way, if you are taking the exam at the testing center, they will hand you a physical piece of paper that tells you your preliminary result. This is not yet verified and approved by PMI. So your preliminary result will be given to you. Okay, and you get that provisional score there. 1 to 5 days later, you will get an official email from PMI, right? And then PMI will validate your exam and will tell you, yes, all good, you have passed your PMP exam. Okay, so this is how that works. There was a blank blue screen at the center for 2 minutes after I had finished, and then congratulations showed up. Right, again, this may just have been maybe for 30 seconds, but in the anxiety of the moment, 30 seconds seems like a lifetime. 15-minute almost. Came to the front desk, they gave me a printed result, 3 above target, and then he also got the email from PMI. So before we move on, let me also bring up something that I read only about on Sunday, okay? Somebody said, I was really confused because when I got my results back, I had 1 below target, right? How can I pass this PMP exam with a below target? So the question was, can you pass with a below target? Can you pass with needs improvement? And the answer is, yes, you can. And this is because the individual domains don't actually count, right? You don't have to be above target and on target for each of the domains. Overall, you have to be, okay? So you can be below target, for example, in domain 3, the business environment domain, because that's only 8% of your exam. In fact, I've looked this up. I've seen one person who had above target in people, above target in the process domain, and needs improvement. So the lowest level you can get in the business environment domain, and still passed. That's because business environment only counts for 8% of your exam score in total, right? And so if you are above target, really well above target in process, people and process, that will cover it. I have also seen one person who had a below target in the process domain and passed because he was above target and above target in the other 2. I have yet to see somebody who has a below target or a needs improvement in the process domain and passes the exam. Okay, so the upshot of all of this is, yes, you can pass with 1 below target, even 1 needs improvement, but you have to be really, really doing well in the other 2 domains. Okay, it's the overall score that counts, not the result of your individual lesson that you have there. Moving on. We're getting closer to the end here, so this is about self-doubt. Okay, self-doubt will eventually creep in. Don't think about passing or failing when you're in the exam room. Focus on the question. Put yourself in the scenario, and after the first third, this person started to think about how they were going to tell their boss it failed. How am I telling my friends, oh God, I have to take this exam again? That is distracting, right? Don't think about anything other than the questions you are answering at the time. Stay focused. And again, using an exam simulator can help you understand when this is creeping in. Okay. The one thing we have to be absolutely clear on the exam as well is questions on the exam are really, really vague. Okay. So sometimes you have 3 answers that look exactly the same. And you're like, oh, could be A, could be C, could be D. I'll pick C, right? And oftentimes your gut feeling, your first impression, all the studies that you've done, your experience, your understanding, your knowing the PMI mindset, and having done this so many times before, your first instinct is correct. Yet, because it's so vague, you're questioning yourself. And because it's vague and vague and vague, and every answer is vague, and you have to pick the best, right, or the least worst of these answers, that is going to cause self-doubt creeping in. So do take each question one at a time, and then reset. Answer a question, reset. Answer a question, reset, right? Do not think about the cumulative result. It is going to drive you crazy, okay? And this is the one thing I want to make sure as well. Even if you are using an exam simulator, you're going to be surprised about the vagueness of the questions on this exam, okay? Exam simulators, we have to balance, right? I have to be vague, but if I'm too vague, you're going to send me emails and complain all day long. And then once you've taken the exam, you're going to go, I'm sorry I sent all these emails. You were right. It is that vague, okay? But I have to balance this out because my support team can't just go every day, I'm sorry, you're wrong. It is that vague and nobody believing us, right? So we have to find, and everybody does this, not just me, I mean, everyone who has an exam simulator, we have to find the right balance when it comes to vagueness and teaching you what you need to know for the exam. So you will feel like you failed on almost every question, but then at question 180, when you thought your pockets were about to be a couple $100 lighter because you have to purchase a retake and pay the re-examination fee, you're embarrassed to tell your family that you failed after all that hard work you put in, right? There it is. Congratulations shows up on your screen. Wonderful. Okay. Yes. Expect to reach a point at which this self-doubt starts creeping in. So I want you to breathe in, I want you to breathe out, and then I want you to continue. All right? One recommendation that I have for you at this point as well is understanding the right mindset for this exam. I have identified 3 general mindsets that you need to have. You need to have a PMI and PMP mindset. You have to understand how PMI thinks about what PMI thinks about project management, how project management, the processes, the people side, the business environment, how that is supposed to work, right? You have to have a good understanding of this. A big problem here is if you have only worked in one company, or if you are really a very, very experienced project manager who's done this all his, her, or their life, right? You've never really been in the PMI world. Changing that is really hard. A good place to start is the glossary. Read the glossary of the PMBOK Guide, at least the glossary of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. I also recommend reading the glossary of the Agile Practice Guide. You'll also notice a difference there because I believe sprint and iteration are used in one, sprint is used in one, iteration is used in the other. So even PMI occasionally uses the terminology slightly differently. So the first one is the PMI and the PMP mindset that you need, understanding how PMI approaches this exam, knowing what processes, what best practices you have to understand in order to take the exam. So that's the PMI, PMP mindset. Then the agile mindset. That's the second mindset that will help you get over all of this self-doubt here. The agile mindset you need because 50% of the exam is on agile. So out of the 180 questions, 90 of those are going to be on agile and hybrid. So agile and hybrid, so a mixed approach really is going to be that. And that means you have to know agile. My recommendation here, you want to read the Agile Practice Guide, not just the glossary, and you also want to read the Scrum Guide. With those two, you have an already good understanding of what the Agile mindset is all about. Even better, if you can start by reading the Agile Manifesto, the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto. If you can internalize those 12 principles, you are on a really good way of understanding the Agile mindset. And then the third and final mindset that you need is the actual exam taking mindset. Much of that we've talked about today. You know, having good time management, understanding all the rules, knowing that this is going to be a grueling 3 hours and 50 minutes, knowing that, oh, there will be a point in time when I'm going to be full of self-doubt. And this point in time may come after 3 questions. First question comes, I have no idea what the answer is. Okay, next. Second question, I have no idea what the answer is. Third question, I really have no idea what the answer is. So it may happen that early on in the game for you. But if you are prepared for this, if you know that this is coming, then these 3 mindsets together, PMI, PMP mindset, agile mindset, and the exam taking mindset, those 3 together, they will help you to overcome your anxiety and be able to pick the correct answer for your exam. All right. We're getting really close to the end because the next slide here already says, and finally, okay? This one is a little bit of a duh, but it bears repeating. Take your time to carefully review each question. You need to make sure that you are keeping a decent pace answering questions at the same time, right? If you are just reading a question sort of haphazardly, yeah, I know what they're asking, it's B, you've probably just picked the wrong answer, right? You have to really read the question correctly, read the full question, and you have to understand what the answers are, and then pick the best one. Sometimes the least bad one, you know, that it is what it is on the PMP exam. Sometimes it is the least bad one. The good news here is this. This exam, come on, move on. This exam is really about solving problems and fixing issues with people and plans. Practical application is definitely the name of the game. In the past, the PMP exam and PMI got a lot of negative flack and negative comments about, you know, this is totally disconnected from real life project management. And, you know, why do I need to know what the inputs are for a particular process? And fair enough, that was a good comment. Nowadays, the PMP exam is much more situational, asks what would you have done differently? What should we have done? What could we have done? How could you have avoided this? What is next? What would a good project manager do, right? And this is what this slide here is trying to say. Practical application is definitely the name of the game. The more you have experience, the more you know how to apply your experience and those 3 mindsets to the PMP exam, the better it is. Yeah, and with that, we're coming to the close of my presentation here. Thank you very much for joining me. As a reminder, okay, this presentation, part of the Charity Project Management Conference, where 29 project managers speak for 24 hours, talk around the clock in support of children and families from the Ukraine. Please do stop by at pmprepcast.com/UNICEF, just a forwarding link, and do your part. Every dollar helps. I did promise you that at the end, I was going to give you a take action slide. Here it is. I think out of the many slides that we have looked at today here, these two are the two things that you really need to do. I want you to download the PMP exam content outline and read it. It is the most important document for the PMP exam, yet nobody knows it, right? Don't forget to take highlighters and highlight everything in there. I know this. I do not know this, okay? Go to pmprepcast.com/PMP outline. And then I want you to know the rules of the PMP exam. pearsonview.com/PMI. This is extremely important. You want to know the rules before you take the exam and not be surprised afterwards. Get the ECO, know the rules. You'll have so much better time of passing your PMP exam. And with that, we have come to the end. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time.